Take it away.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Krista Reeves. I'm the Water Quality Program Coordinator with the Musconetcong Watershed Association. And we wrapped up our 2022 harmful algal bloom monitoring in the recreational lakes of the Musconetcong Watershed. So just a little background for this study. We started just last year in 2021. We received a mini grant from the Watershed Institute to study harmful algal blooms in the Musconetcong River. We looked at the headwater lakes in Lake Apacong, Lake Musconetcong, Saxton, Tilcon. We went all the way down to the Bloomsbury Dam impoundment and some agricultural ponds within the watershed. Once that expired, we now have some ongoing support from the National Park Service that helps fund the water quality program there. And what we were able to do with this is purchase 4 Turner fluorescence handheld meters. That's the exact meter that NJDEP uses so that all of the data is comparable. And it gave us some time to conduct trainings, get ourselves trained up, train the trainer, and facilitate coordination to collect, analyze, and report all this data with an all-volunteer crew. So this is all volunteers, all river watchers. And we go out June through September, and that's weekly at most locations, weather permitting, right? And so, using all volunteers, we're leveraging the power of the public. Like Alan said, we wouldn't have known about this spill that happened at the IPP if it hadn't been for volunteers reporting to us. And that's the same concept here too. It's community science, water quality monitoring. We're in our 16th year total for the River Watcher program. Yearly, we sample at 7 sites. For the HAB monitoring, it's over 20 sites now. I think it's something like 27 sites. We add and take away a couple of sites as we find things or don't find things in those areas. And so we find those benefits to see how the changes in the watershed affect our river health and measure the value of our restoration progress and pre and post dam removals, detection of new invasive species like the New Zealand mud snail, and getting the community involved with the river. So the role of the public and MWA, due to climate change, the waters are warming and the frequency and duration of HABs is increasing. And so, I've mentioned DEP before, the agencies, they only have so much capacity to monitor. So if we can help expand that capacity and get more trained people out there with these meters that are comparable, we can help spread out that effort. Then we can have some more informed recreational choices. That way, people aren't getting sick or even pets, which is a concern too, when people take their dogs down to the water, that they don't jump in the water accidentally and become ill. And so we've also come to find that informed community members, they have a stake in the health and the environment, and that builds constituency within the community. And so that interface with the DEP on this HABs program has really allowed us to spread the message and keep this messaging pretty consistent. Back when HABs really became a problem on Lake Apacong, the messaging was not very consistent and people didn't know what to do. They didn't know what the signs meant on I-80. It said, the lake was closed. And, in reality, all that really meant was that bathing beaches were closed for primary contact. And so the DEP really regrouped and did a great job getting their messaging together. And so now we have this system right here at the bottom row. So if you see any of these signs out, it's going to tell you exactly what, that advisory, the watch, the warning means, and what activities you should or should not engage in for health reasons. And then they also have, on the top left here, they have this HAB interactive map reporting and communication system. So if you go to that little address at the bottom of the screen there and click around, you're going to find this interactive map. And if you like to recreate in a certain area, you can zoom in right there and find out what the most recent readings are if there is an advisory or a warning there, and you probably shouldn't go there to recreate. Or if things are great and you can go kayaking or tubing or do whatever you want. And it just is kind of one of those know before you go situations. And then if you do happen to become a river watcher or you become knowledgeable in what a HAB looks like, or you learn how to use these meters, you can report a HAB. They have a really simple Google form right on their website. You click on it and you need some basic information, where you saw the HAB, take some pictures with your phone, get the nearest cross streets, GPS location from Google Maps if you can, and just give them the most complete information that you can so that they can send somebody out then to verify and test after you. And so what do the river watchers do? So the river watchers are really going to be, the heart and soul of going out and monitoring for these HABs. They come to the MWA and attend a training session, and they learn to discern between actual harmful algal blooms and their lookalikes. Early in the year, there's a lot of lookalikes with pollen. People mistake pollen for a HAB, usually around the June kind of area. When the trees are really blowing pollen all over the place, it gathers at shorelines. Duckweed is another one that looks a lot like a HAB, but if you can pick it up with a stick, it's not it, right? So HABs are single-celled organisms. They fall apart upon contact. So if it's organic matter, duckweed, other things like this, and you can pick it up in a clump, that's not a HAB. So they, come to these trainings and learn how to discern between the actual HABs and the lookalikes. They learn how to calibrate their meters. Team leaders for each region gets a meter and they work with their group in that area. They learn how to calibrate and use those handheld meters. They monitor, they visit sites weekly, like I said, from June to September. And then they document that data. There's a little data form up the top there. It's not just the phycocyanin, which is what the meters are reading. But a lot of them also have conductivity meters, which also have temperature inside of that meter. So we're taking air temperature, water temperature, sometimes conductivity, and the phycocyanin reading. I know also there are some people up on Lake Apacong who have Secchi discs. So they'll take those Secchi discs reading as a proxy for turbidity and report that as well. And so if they find something suspicious that looks like a HAB and that reading goes above the NJDEP's limit for an exceedance, which is 11 RFUs on the meter, they go ahead and report that HAB at the report a HAB tab. And so the focus area for 2022, we cut out the bottom portion behind Bloomsbury Dam. We didn't find anything last year, so we're not going to continue monitoring with that. Then also some of the agricultural ponds we're following up with RC&D and, taking that forward with private landowners. So what we really wanted to focus on this year is all the recreational lakes. So we heavily focused on Saxtons Lake, Tilcon, Musconetcong, and Hopatcong. And I know there's a lot of data, so I'm going to just let it sit right here while we all take this in for a minute. But what I really want to point out here is let me move this share bar to my way here. Okay. Is that we have 16 sites on Lake Apacong, and the number of violations versus the number of readings is extremely high. We'll see those statistics in just a moment. But what I'd also like to point out is that the average water temperature this year was pretty high. Crescent Cove is really pushing the limit there. We're talking 27 degrees Celsius that's a mean temperature. That's not even the highest temperature readings. We had some for the highest reading, we're up in around 32 degrees Celsius. So that's some really, really warm water. And when we look further downstream, I have a sensor in the water on the river. We saw several days where it was above that trout maintenance criteria limit. It was hanging around 25 degrees C for a couple of months on a 7-day rolling average. So, we all know we had very sporadic rain this summer. We had drought conditions, so very low water levels, which means the water gets warmer. And so as those waters get warmer, the HABs bloom even more. And so we'll go on to Lake Musconetcong. Maybe. So Lake Musconetcong, we have 3 stations that we're monitoring, and Tilcon, we have just that main portion that we're monitoring there. And so similar, but not the same. So Lake Musconetcong had extremely high temperatures and, high number of readings and then number of violations versus those readings. Tilcon Lake, however, had no violations. But you can see that the temperature is still in the upper echelons here of what we have for our average water temperature. And so further down in the river now, what we call that impoundment, Saxton Lake, we had these 4 sites. So we have what's known as Lock 4. That's where a lot of people launch kayaks, canoes onto the lake. Then we have the hiking path, which is Morris Canal Bridge 1 and 2. And then there is also a path that people go down to the river right above the falls, Saxton Falls. That's the falls right there. That's the dam. And so there's a path down there that people visit and use to recreate as well. And you can see that over the entirety of the monitoring season, that we actually did get a violation where we did not last year. So the water got warm enough and we did end up having 1 violation according to the phycocyanin meter. DEP did follow up and they did not find any microcystin cell counts there. So there was no advisory issued. So if we look at exceedances by month, right, as we warm up here, so does the exceedances, right? So in June, 24% of all readings exceeded that threshold limit. In July, 66%, August up to 81, and September, 82. So it just goes up as the water gets warmer. Not really a surprise there. Our top 3 exceedances were in Crescent Cove. There's 2 stations there in Crescent Cove. So like I said, if you remember, the exceedance limit on the meter is 11. So we see these readings at 105, 146, 126. And so that had an advisory, I think, most of the end of June, all the way up to even right now, I think there's an advisory out still on the south part of the cove. On 8-9, there was an algicide applied. It's called Green Clean. It's a hydrogen peroxide solution instead of a copper-based solution. They applied that to the cove kind of to see if that would help and not add to the copper loading in the cove. They did not really get the results they wanted. I did talk to Colleen and the Lake Kapakong Commission, and basically what she had said is that they applied 5 acres of this to an 80-acre cove, and so this was a little trial run to see how they could get this to work in the future. They're going to regroup with the Lake Kapakong Foundation and DEP and Princeton Hydro to see how they could use this moving forward. And so, how are the HABs events now, right? Now we're in October. We've had some more rain and some cooler temperatures. And I just pulled these as of yesterday. And so you can see that there's still advisories. The orange is an advisory in several parts of Lake Kapakong and Lake Musconetcong. And these are at most points where we have river watchers and the Lake Kapakong Foundation out there doing monitoring. So DEP is following up and coming out and taking those samples and finding the microcystin levels at a high enough quantity that they are putting advisories out. And so there's also continuous buoys that you can find on the NJDEP website that I have listed here. And, they have data that's, taken pretty regularly for DO, chlorophyll, phycocyanin. That's the readings that we take with the handheld meters. Temperature, pH, turbidity, the cloudiness in the water, specific conductance, salinity, dissolved oxygen. So if you're interested in keeping up with that, I know a few of you with Lake Kapakong Foundation did take some readings side by side with those buoys to kind of try and track the data comparability And I found that very interesting. There was one at the Bonaparte. Can't remember the other one, but they were pretty close to what NJDEP had as well. So how does this compare to the data we collected last year? So year over year, as of 2021, in June, we had 6.5% exceedances. This year it was 24. July it was 16%. Last year, 66% this year. August, 31.5%, all the way up to 81. And then 53 in September and 82 this year. So, I mean, it's definitely been, much more as far as frequency and the duration of HABs this year. And, why might that be? Well, reasons for the higher percentage and duration of the HABs this year could be higher average water temperatures, looking at those buoys and the temperatures that river watchers took last year, and uneven precipitation patterns and a drought-like condition for a big chunk of the summer. So some of our next steps are to keep the equipment loan program going, to continue monitoring, to get these long-term data trend analyses going with this, and to keep collaborating and work with LHF and LHC to share our data so that we can start pinpointing things earlier to get that data into NJDEP. Train more river watchers to keep educating and building constituency, and regroup with Vic Peretti at NJDEP. He's the one in charge of the HABs program there, to kind of see how our data collection is helping them, if there's something we can do to refine our process. Are we overloading them with data? Is it the right amount of data? And, kind of see if we can do anything to help that program out any further. So thank you very much, everybody. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions, anyone? Comments? I have Krista, that was an excellent program, by the way. If there's no questions on Krista's program, I have one. I'd like to combine both Nancy and Krista's programs. We had two excellent programs, and I think they were pretty good and a pretty important report card on our Musconetcong River Management Council, in the sense that we had one program that was reaching out to encompass new groups or groups that are out there that have been kind of not part of us. And I think that's important to give them the recreational opportunities also, because once that happens, they will start to build a sense of importance and a sense of pride in the river, and that spills over to go and back up exactly what Krista just showed us about how we're trying to protect the river and make it better for our recreation and everything else. So one actually feeds onto the other and vice versa. I would, again, follow in our tradition of recognizing excellence, and especially since we taped both of those, I would like to see us, number one, acknowledge as a council the two excellent presentations, and furthermore, since we have taped it, basically recommend that they reach out to the MWA and get copies of those tapes and see these programs, because I think that they speak very well for themselves, and they're important. So if I could have a motion to acknowledge both the excellence of both programs, and also to support and encourage the reviewing of those programs, I'd appreciate it.
Charlie, it's Marsha. I so move.
Thank you. And a second?
I will.
Thanks, Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Unanimous, and excellent job by both Nancy and Krista, and keep up the good work.
Charlie, can I ask Krista a question?
Sure.
I think
Krista,
Marsha, I think
yeah.
Cliff had his hand up first. I saw
Oh,
Al,
okay, that's fine.
and then you. And
Okay.
then, all right. Cliff?
Who's next?
Yeah, this is Cliff London from Lake Opakon. I wanted to thank Krista, great job. And I wanted to thank MWA for all the assistance that they gave to us in this project. I think looking at the results, and I took many, many of these results, we at Lake Hopatcong are in a chronic low-level HAB. It is, most of the readings were at that watch level throughout the entire summer. In fact, at my dock, I kept doing samples every week through the winter, and that included in ice fishing holes and cracks in the lake, in the ice. And we were in fact picking up low levels of the organism throughout the entire year. One interesting bit of my observations this summer is that where we had HABs, we had much lower aquatic weed vegetation. The productivity of what was harvested is down where we had HABs. Where weeds were growing quickly, we did not have HABs. And literally down the cove from me, there was almost a dividing line where the water was clear, but it was full of weeds. And then you had the green slime. But it's something that we can continue to monitor. I intend to continue to look at it over the course of the winter again. But in reality, we at the lake are in a chronic state of, HAB watch. And I think, clearly it was this year much higher than last year. So,
Yeah,
but again,
Cliff,
thank you to Krista.
You've been invaluable in taking all these readings and, your comments, your observations. I read all of those, and, your measurements of where the water level was relative to the top of the dam. That's just kind of too much to put into the presentation, but I was definitely, tracking that and analyzing that data because it matches, what I'm seeing as far as water levels coming out on the river and seeing, the height of the gauges there too. And, it just does correlate all these observations that you're making. And, I hope that you're also submitting that information to Princeton Hydro and Fred Love now. I'm sure that he'd appreciate that. And I know he's in on a lot of our email chains. And so he does have access to that. So thank you for that, Cliff.
Thanks. Yeah, no, all the data has been shared with everybody. So
Yeah.
No, and I think that's important. And I think as a council, Cliff, we thank you and your Hopatcong Association and look forward to working with you, because working together is the only way we're going to hopefully figure out how we can improve this.
So far, we're right on schedule. Al, you had your hand up for a moment. Do you have a question?
No, nothing more to add, Alan. Just both very interesting presentations.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Al.
Yeah, Alan, this is Paul. I just have a quick question for Krista.
Yeah.
Krista, the closest water temperature gauge outside of Lake Hopatcong in the river itself, does the data match up? Is there any kind of pattern that emerges between the data in the lake and that gauge?
Absolutely. It's about a mile downstream of the outlet of Lake Musconetcong at Old Waterloo Road. And it's even hotter once it comes out of Lake Musconetcong
Really?
than when it comes out of Lake Hopatcong, because it's a more shallow lake. And so it heats up even more coming out of there. And I was seeing temperatures that were violating trout maintenance,
Parameters.
yeah, pretty much for most of the summer, a 7-day rolling average.
Yeah. Krista, if you could send me a PDF of that
Absolutely.
presentation, and the same goes for Nancy, if I could get a PDF of that Hackettstown presentation. Thank you.
Sure.
Marcia, you had a question?
Yeah, I wanted to know if Krista would be willing to, we have our next council meeting in January for the New Jersey State Council of TU. If you would be willing to do this kind of presentation, and if you're going to be calling for more river helpers for 2023, I'd like to be able to see this and see why there is a need for the river watchers, river helpers, I'm sorry.
Absolutely,
River helpers is
Marcia.
something we use at
It's river,
Captains
yeah,
for
river
Recovery.
watchers, no problem. I'm always looking for more river watchers, so
Um,
you bet,
and
Marcia.
if you would-
Just let me know some dates if you have
Okay.
those, and we can schedule that, no problem.
And Nancy, thanks for your presentation. We'll also get together and figure out how we can work together, because it's an untouched large community that we could bring into our own, and that's what we're about these days at TU. So thank you both.
Thank you, Marcia. Mike from Pahakon, you got your hand up?
Yes. First of all, Krista, thank you for a great presentation. I'm curious, so we know that the HAB problem is bad and seems to be getting worse. What course of action does this lead us to, either on an individual or local government level?
On an individual level, it's about maintaining buffers if you have any property that abut the lake or the river, so that they can filter out those nutrients, slow down the water so it's not as hot when you have stormwater runoff. So basically maintaining some kind of green infrastructure around your property. Not fertilizing a lawn. If you have one, try to be native as much as possible. And then if you have a septic system, to have that regularly maintained and pumped, because a lot of the nutrients that are entering both the lake and the river that feed these HABs do come from septic waste. So that is a big input and something that we're definitely working on as an organization.
Thank you. Dwight from Holland Township, hand up.
Yeah, is anyone looking at the economic impact of this in the lakes and potentially the rivers to get more
Yep.
attention on it? If there seems like there would be some kind of economic impact.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know they did an economic impact study I think it was 2019 when they first closed the lake, and put a dollar amount to that. I don't know if there's been any follow-up to that. That would definitely be a question for Lake Pacong Foundation. And so I could talk to Donna and get back to you on that and see if she's had any follow-up to that.
Yeah, at least with Spruce Run, I'm near that, and when that's closed, that's a lot of people not traversing the area.
Yeah, no, I like to go there too and kayak, and I constantly am looking on that interactive site so that I know I'm not going to make a trip all the way there with my kayaks and then not be able to get in the water. So absolutely.
Frank Pinto from Greenwich.
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm speaking out of Greenwich role and part of my consultant work. I am working on an initiative that is a regional trail network around Lake Pacong. Part of that work, I've learned that there is recently a federal grant that's being or federal monies that are being set aside for Jefferson Township to do a substantial sewering project to eliminate a lot of the septics around the lake. So that apparently is moving forward, and Congresswoman Mickey Sherrill has that in her plan. So that's going on. And what's nice is I get now to spend a lot of time on the lake, which is awesome. And apparently it was, from what I'm told, in better shape this year. It seemed to be that there wasn't as much runoff from rainstorms that seems to be contributing to a better water quality in the lake. Just something that I heard while I was out there doing my work. And lastly, no, I'm working with the Lake Pacong Foundation on that trail segment. And one of the key things that we're looking at right now is the Brady Bridge, which is one of the few roads, the only road really that crosses the middle of the lake, and enabling basically like a bridge alongside the existing causeway for pedestrian access to complete a trail system throughout Lake Pacong. So there are some ecotourism type economic development initiatives going on around the lake now.
Very good. Thank you very much. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Good news with the would to go into sewers.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm seeing everybody, but is there anybody else with a hand raised or that has a question? If not, we'll go to the NPS report. Paul?